I'm happy to move the apologies for Deputy Mayor Cashmore for absence on council business and Councillors Casey Fletcher and Quacks for absence and Councillor Daniel Newman for lateness on council business. So, have a seconder. Councillor Hills. Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Declaration of interest. We have two people declaring, making a declaration, which is Mayor Goff and Councillor John Walker, in items 5.1 and item 10. So, hence why we had to wait to get a quorum of 13, not 11, because two people will leave the room. So, that is noted. Confirmation of the minutes. Could someone please move? Councillor Simpson, seconded. Councillor Darby. No alterations. All those in favour?
Aye.
There are no petitions. Public input. We have two on public input. And welcome, Penny.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, what I'm raising this morning is just continuing to try and make sure there is no stone left unturned in terms of trying to ensure that Auckland Council and council-controlled organisations comply with their statutory duties arising from the Public Records Act. And following what I think was a very good meeting with the Auckland Council Strategic Procurement Committee, which just deals with contracts that are awarded by Auckland Council. I'm now here at the Finance and Performance Committee meeting, and your terms of reference, as you know, your responsibilities. The purpose of the committee is to control and review expenditure across the Auckland Council Group to improve value for money. B, monitor the overall financial management and performance of the council parent organisation and the Auckland Council Group. So now that the child, Auckland Transport, of the Auckland parent is now, as you know, providing devilish details of contracts awarded which are valued at less than $50,000, which means that all contracts awarded by Auckland Council. The details are now available for public scrutiny. As I said at the Strategic Procurement Committee meeting, it's now time, not just that Auckland Council caught up, but all the other CCOs caught up as well. So what I'm here to do today is to give it another chug along, and what I'm formally requesting is that all CCOs provide the same details of awarded contracts as do Auckland Transport. And what I wish to have attached to the minutes, I just printed off today, the first page of awarded contracts from Auckland Transport, which is the evidence that proves that contracts worth less than $50,000 are now being published. The thing that I'm still very deeply concerned about is that the area of subcontracted contracts, that is not yet included with Auckland Transport or Auckland Council or any of the CCOs, and what the unprecedented bribery and corruption case in the Auckland High Court proved was that effectively you have two layers of corruption. One is public to private, where the corrupt public official gives a very big contract to a private contractor. Then you have private to private corruption, where backhanders are exchanged in order for subcontracts to be awarded. And there is no place for either of those things, particularly in New Zealand, perceived to be the least corrupt country in the world. And to fix this, we need to make sure that the same level of scrutiny is applied to subcontracts. The other thing I'm deeply concerned about is the collaborative model for contracting, which the High Court case showed effectively was the basis for the corrupt model, where you didn't seem to have any boundaries, lines, or clear guidelines between public and private, and public officials and private contractors were partnering together, and it just seemed to be compasses of any sort, moral or otherwise, just completely vanished out the window. And what concerns me is with Auckland Council CCO governance manual, that a lot is made of that collaborative model. And I've printed off a couple of key pages from that, and I think that also must be reviewed. The collaborative model must be reviewed. Must. Because the proven corruption risk, we have the evidence for that. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I believe that precedent is the most powerful argument. Good enough for Auckland Transport, good enough for Auckland Council and Council CCOs, but it needs to be extended to subcontracts, and also, as I say, the collaborative model needs to be looked at. And the last point I'd like to remind councillors of is that the Public Records Act has been the law since 2005. It is now 2017. That the Office of the Auditor General came out with guidelines for procurement in 2008. It's now 2017. But the Office of the Auditor General guidelines were very clear about the requirement of councils to comply with the law, and the Public Records Act 2005 was specifically mentioned. In my considered opinion, as an anti-corruption campaigner, I believe that those Office of the Auditor General guidelines have not been effectively enforced by anybody, apart from a persistent pain-in-the-neck citizen who is going nowhere until the law is complied with. So on that cheery note, councillors, I'll leave it there.
Perfect, Penny. Right, questions? Great. Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Thank you, Penny, for coming along and reinforcing your message to us. At a personal level, Penny, I don't have any issues at all with what you're trying to achieve, and I'm very pleased that Auckland Transport have done what they have done. So, what it does in my mind is it just minimises any potential misperception by the public around the activities of Auckland Council and the group. So greater transparency equals, I guess, greater confidence in Auckland Council, and we're trying to increase our confidence and trust ratings with the ratepayers and residents of Auckland. So my question might be through you, Mr Chair, is if we wanted to, I guess, encourage this or expand it within Auckland Council and perhaps across the CCOs, Ross, how would we go about that, I guess?
Come back to you, Councillor Sayers, because you're here to ask
Sure.
the presenter questions, not me.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, one point that I didn't emphasise, which I should have, arising from the unprecedented bribery and corruption case involving Auckland Transport, what came out loud and clear there, which horrified me, was the fact that a so-called public official could simultaneously be a private consultant. In fact, the bribes, that's where they were channelled through, the private consultancy firm of Murray John Noon, who's now serving 5 years in jail. And what I want to know is where is the corruption risk of public officials simultaneously holding private sector businesses or consultancies, and when is that going to be looked at, and how on earth can that be ethical, proper, lawful, or anything? Make your choice. You're either a public official or you're a private business person. You can't be both at the same time, because guess what happens? Corruption. Thanks.
Potentially corruption. Councillor Philippine.
Thank you, Chair. Look, my question is based on your comment to Councillor Sayers, and when is the opportunity, or when can we ask questions around what happens post this? Because my question is not to Penny. There was a comment that, and the reason I asked this particular question, Chair, is because of the presence of Penny at the strategic procurement meeting that we had earlier this month, and there's a report coming through, and there were some comments raised there, especially in support and the advocacy that Penny has from Councillor Hulse. So I just wanted to sort of make sure that there's no duplication anywhere, that we are working together. So when can I at least comment on that?
Thank you. Through the Chair, Councillor, I would suggest, and Councillor Sayers as well, I think you're talking similarly, that your opportunity for that is that we do have the quarterly reports from the CCOs. Now, obviously, we do have that on Friday, however, that's retrospective, so I would suggest the opportunity to do that is the next quarterly reporting to the Finance and Performance Committee of the CCOs, which you should expect to be, probably this month was late, it should actually be in July.
And just through you, Chair, supplementary, because at the strategic and procurement, and I've spoken to the Chair in regards to the deputation from Penny, that there was a report called for at the strategic procurement. So I just want to make sure we're not sort of working in isolation of each other. And this is the reason why I've asked it, because there is a report and there was one asked for at the strategic procurement. So, I mean, I just want to make sure that, you know, there's not another one here, which is really dealing with the same issue that Penny, and I know that Councillor Holtz mentioned at that particular committee, and thanked Penny, Ms. Bright, for her advocacy, you know, and continued advocacy in regards to it. So that's all. I just would want to see any duplication, that's all.
So through the Chair, if I may just to address that point, Councillor, the report that will be going to the Strategic Procurement Committee can then be referred to this committee for noting, so that there is no duplication. It is one report that is then addressed to the wider audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And also the lead staff member at the Procurement Committee reports to Sue as well.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
So we will move a recommendation. I'm happy to do that. Receive the presentation from Penny Bright and thank her for her attendance. Seconded by Councillor Sayers. All those in favour?
Aye.
Right, we now have the Second Nature Charitable Trust, Sir Noel Robinson and Richard Jeffries, and anyone else that is from your committee, Richard? Just the two of you?
All our trustees.
Please bring them, please come up. If you could then introduce your team.
Well, thank you very much for seeing, excuse me, just one sec. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much for seeing us today. I would like to acknowledge the apologies from our trustees who aren't here today. Our Deputy Chairman John Bongard is overseas, Karen Avery, Ted Nataki and Terry Spragg. I also would like to acknowledge the trustees are here. Next to me is Mike Hutchinson, Luke Patterson is down the far end, Hamish Crooks and Maureen Shadbrock. And of course Richard Jeffrey, our Chief Executive. I'd like to, the only comment, Richard will give a presentation which we're really appreciative to be able to pass this on to you today. But I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the trustees who work an incredible number of hours, no payment, no funding at all. They're doing it out of the community good for the people of the South, and tens of thousands of hours have been put in over the years by these trustees, and I would like to acknowledge that. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Richard.
Thank you, Noel. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity this morning. I've put together a presentation. I'll try and get through it quite quickly because there's about 18 years of history to get through. Does this work? So probably if we start with the land where the Trust's activities are based, you'll see there an old photo with the boundary around it, and that was land that was gifted to the Trust, the proceeds by Manukau City Council, and that's just to put it into context, the site, and then this is what we've created so far today, being the Vodafone Event Centre and then the Vector Wirral Whitewater Park. Back in 1988, Manukau City Council first purchased the site for $3 million for the purpose of housing a civic facility of some type. What they wanted at that stage they didn't know, but they wanted to secure the site as a strategic land parcel. During 1988 to 1998, over 20 projects were proposed for the site, but nothing ever got off the ground. There were things like ski fields, golf courses, Polynesian villages. The last one that got close to having any legs was, I think, Roger Douglas's Superdome, and that one fell over. Then it came up with Auckland Regional Council wanted to look at a proposal for Mount Smart Stadium for an indoor arena. Auckland City Council wanted to do the same, and so did Manukau City Council. Sensibly, they appointed the Hillary Commission at the time, Sir Wilson Wineray, to adjudicate and look at which proposal would be best, and cutting forward to the future, that was basically Vector Arena. So Sir Barry Curtis, as Mayor of Manukau, approached Sir Noel and a lot of other community stakeholders and formed a group, a working party from within the community called the Pacific Steering Group. That was formed in 1999. That group then, independently of council, went out and got pledges for $300,000 to then start the feasibility work on looking at building a stadium. So in 99, KPMG basically finished a proposal for a stadium. The business plan around that was then put together. Manukau City Council then gave conditional support to the trust to be formed, that it would give the proceeds of the land in its totality to the trust, and the trust would then work out what part it wanted to keep for developing the venues. It did, though, request that a performing arts theatre be put into the project. So then the steering group, along with council, formed the County's Manukau Pacific Trust. So that was our name. We have changed in more recent years to Second Nature Charitable Trust to align with our objectives. The trust was formed in July, and then the first thing that the trust did was revise the business plan to include the theatre, and by doing that basically made the stadium proposal redundant. As I think Sir Noel always said, we're a little bit long in stadia, so we wanted to actually concentrate on a facility that was of relevance to our own community as a sub-regional facility. We completed the design, funding, the resource consents, and exhausted all the funding avenues. We couldn't reach our target of $49 million. So we went back to council and said, what do you want to do? Council approved an additional grant to us from, we were very lucky that year, there was a capital dividend from the airport shares that the council held, and part of that was allocated to us as $9 million. Also, the operating grant for running the project, and an overdraft guarantee of $7 million, which was fully repaid. In 2003, we then negotiated a fixed lump sum contract with Mainzeal as the lead contractor for the project. We were then also, during the project, approached by Deputy Mayor Ann Candy to look at installing the Pokapua as another major project, which, if you've been to the venue, it's like our Statue of Liberty. It's the world's largest totem. And we raised an additional $1 million independently of council to complete that wonderful project. In total, by February 2005, we'd secured funding for $49 million, which included council's land sale and also the grant to basically pay for all the bills. And pleased to say that back in 2005, I don't know if you all recall, but in 2004, 2005, New Zealand experienced the greatest escalation in construction costs via steel, aggregate and labour, and we still managed to deliver the project on time and within budget. And really the proof in the pudding for the venue is it's referred to in our community as the town hall. We've had over 40 million people attend since our opening, and we host over 250 events a year. So in the context of what is the facility, for those that haven't been, it's really like a Bruce Mason Centre and a North Shore Event Centre, but under one piece of infrastructure. I've got a very quick video here, just 3 minutes. Forgive the quality because it is quite an old one, but it just runs through, for those that may have not been to the facility, the project.
From the Genesis Theatre, Telstra Clear Pacific in Monaco. It's time to sing like a superstar.
Hold your event in 2005.
Telstra Clear Pacific Event Centre.
A home for business, arts, sports and leisure in Manukau City. A 3,000-seat indoor arena and a 700-seat theatre. Banqueting from 20 to 1,500 in a stunning architectural environment with no traffic hassles and ample car parking.
Telstra Clear Pacific Event Centre. Showcasing excellence.
Call 0508 for events.
This year, Manukau celebrates 40, and this time now is right to open this magnificent facility. And everyone that's been through this place, people have rung me up, sent me letters, and they are absolutely delighted. They're full of admiration for the vision of the Trust, the vision of myself and the Manukau City Council for getting the job done.
We gave them, I think, 12 different options, from a 60,000-seat football stadium to just a conference centre, exhibition centre or theatre or indoor sports arena or exhibition space. We gave them all the different combinations, and we spent a lot of money getting this detailed research, and the research came out as basically what we've got here today.
Because it's just of its innovation, and it's different, and it's got a neat theme behind it, and that which connects to people and cultures, and it's just it's a good space to have out here in Manukau. Yeah, it's like our own little Aotea centre.
Once you're here and you're sitting inside the venue and you look along the row or you look across the other side of the arena and you see someone you know, it's someone in the, you know you're part of the community.
So Sir Barry still lives on. So that was basically where we got to, opened in 2005, and then during a period of time we had the rest of the site that we converted from Business 5 to Reserve to protect the future opportunity to develop the full site to create a critical mass. So the vision for the Trust was, for the second stage, was to create a destination of international significance, well-being of relevance for our local community. And so we went through a lot of different design, feasibility processes, and the project that ticked all the boxes then became known as our Wirral project, which is now Victor Wirral. So with that, we then approached Council via Regional Facilities Auckland as our interface with Council to resell the land that we originally sold back in back in 2002 to contribute towards the project, which was successful and contributed $20 million towards the $45 million that we needed. So in addition to that, we've fully raised $25 million through various philanthropic means and grants from government, etc. And we delivered on time and on budget the first stage, which was the Convention Centre extension, which is the outrigger for the Vodafone Event Centre, in January last year. And then shortly after opened the Victor Wirral Whitewater Park. That opened in April 2016. And then just more recently, we've just opened, the Prime Minister opened in February, the Momentum Hub, which is a cluster of charities that we give free rent and utilities to that are focused in the youth development space and can leverage off the Whitewater Park. The aforementioned now audited figures that returns well over $1 million of community good each year into the community via mainly our schools programs. We've been running schools programs for actually since 2004, before we even opened the venue, that's one of our big focus areas. So there's a shot that shows the total project and it's complete. You'll see up here is the Momentum Hub, the latest part of the project, for those on that side. The conference centre there, and then the water park as such. Two rivers, the Tamariki River through here for our schools programs, and then the larger river for corporate team building, the Olympic team, international events, and whitewater rescue training facilities as well. I'll just play a very quick video here that just that Lotteries produced, which explains the project.
Hear that? That's the sound of water rushing past at 11,000 litres per second. I'm here at Victor Wera Whitewater Park in Manukau, and I'm going to tackle these rapids. I'm in safe hands. This is Ian Ferguson, former Olympic gold medalist, my childhood hero, and he runs the place.
Victor Wera is the best artificial course on the planet, designed for recreation as well as top kayakers.
You have tested it all right?
We have totally tested it, and you're safe.
Here goes nothing. That was incredible. You're going to come try it out. Who's this place for?
Olympic athletes, playboaters, rafters, to families, everybody really. It's free to come in and just wander around, just come to enjoy it. One day we're definitely going to have Olympic champions bred here.
How did it go?
Oh, it was really good.
It was real fun just getting thrashed around.
It was amazing. What a rush.
Here in South Auckland, we've got this world-class man-made river, and you, the lotto players, have helped make it happen. So good on you.
So basically, in regards to the question was asked about our performance, our accounts are audited every year independently. They're available for the public. We have an open door. If anyone ever wants to come through them in detail, I'm more than happy to assist. But basically, we're financially self-sustainable, and we've created an asset pool replacement value of well over $170 million into a community that would have never seen such an asset base for civic use. We take all operating risk on everything we do, running the facilities, our operating expenses, capital, maintenance, sinking fund for long-term maintenance. So, for example, when we had to repaint the exterior of the event centre after 10 years, that was a huge cost, but we didn't have to ask anyone for money because we had a sinking fund where we'd accumulated that $300,000 to be able to do that. Council contribution, which is greatly appreciated via regional facilities, is $365,000 per annum. It used to be $385,000, and that's slowly reducing down. We break even every year on an operating basis and our sinking fund, etc., and while still delivering our targets of over $1 million into the community each year. So we basically operate as a social enterprise. 65% of our business is community, which is a very, very wide range, and then the other 35% of activity basically pays the bills. And we run both facilities. In total, we employ 14 full-time staff, so it's very mean and lean. Just by way of benchmarking, as a percentage of expenditure covered by council via RFA, if you've got, look there, the North Shore Event Centre, 20% of their expenditure is covered by council. Ours is 6%. Trust Stadium is about 13%, and then Auckland, regional facilities, Auckland's venues, as within their own cluster, 39% of their revenue is generated via council. This is the hub. So there we've created 6 offices where we've got various charities based there for free, and we've got 2 classrooms, one with the Panasonic Theatre and then the other, the Whitewater Rescue Centre, and so we have various community groups have free use of those as well, and schools. We're putting through, usually every day we're putting 100 school kids through our training, whitewater safety, how to react and such like in water and use the facility, which we subsidise that and also sponsor it for free for our local schools. We've also just got High Performance Sport New Zealand now based there. Luca Jones winning a silver medal was one of the best things that ever happened at the Olympics for us, because it's sort of propelled that side of what the facility can be used for. I'll just play a quick video here of our schools program. This is just one sample of what we do. So we'll bring the kids in, they get kitted up to learn what a life jacket is and the importance of it, then look at the river and learn about the flow and the float position of how to stay upright and let the current carry you until you're in safety, which is the same in the ocean if you're in a rip. And then we lower the river and practice river crossing, so they learn that although it's shallow water, it is still very dangerous because of the current that it takes. And then after that, they then do team building with rafting. And so last year we had just over 6,000 kids come through this program, and we've fully supported all of that as well as the other activity we do in the event centre. So schools programs isn't a new thing to us, as I touched on earlier. In our first year in 2004, before we opened the facility, we got sponsorship to build a classroom on site for the children to come in and learn about stormwater retention through our environmental stormwater ponds, etc. And 3,000 that year. We've now grown that to 32,000, and we hope to, over the next 5 years, increase that number up to 45,000. There should be circulated in front of you, it's just come out last week, as our annual report, which is, we report on our community good across all aspects of what we do. So I think hopefully that gives you an overview, and if you want any more details in any areas or any other questions and answers, more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, very good. Right, councillors, if you wanted to have the presentation to learn more about the trust, that's fairly comprehensive. Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you. Just going over the history, one part of the history that I don't think you did actually mention, and that was back in 2009, and that's when the High Court ruled that the land next to the Telstra Pacific Event Centre, if it's sold, the proceeds would go back to the Manukau City, which is now the Auckland Council, would go back to the ratepayers. And there was a High Court ruling that the net proceeds from another sale or any sale of land would go back to the council, and it wouldn't go back to the trust, because the trust over the years has actually, we've sold the land a few times, and the trust has actually got money from it, and so the decision was made very clear that the council retained the net proceeds from any sale of the land. So in 2009 the land value was around about 30 to 40 million, and so probably in my time of being a councillor on the Manukau City Council, it was probably one of the most discussed things in our community, and certainly didn't have a lot of support from a lot of the people in the communities. And so I just wondered.
Just how it.
So no, I've asked the question. I said that they hadn't discussed the 2009, because there has been a lot of history, and I'm and I'm sure you're aware that the Manukau Council had to spend over $300,000 taking you to the High Court to get that ruling that any sale of that land would actually come back to the people now of Auckland.
So through the chair, what is the question though, please?
Well, the question is that is there anything further you want to tell us about the history? Because you've been telling us some of the history, but there's been parts of the history
Yeah, no,
that you
and
haven't
I'm more
actually-
than happy. There's heaps of history on the project. You know, the trust has been around for about 17 years. So if we go back to the very first slide where I showed you the land, so basically the idea was that the land would be gifted to the trust through taxation reasons. The land had to be sold first and then the proceeds of the land given to the trust. The trust ran that process all the way through. When we sold the land, we looked at other examples around the country of projects where land had been sold to fund the other projects, and unfortunately the developers just sat on the land and did nothing and land banked it. So when we sold it to Aldermoss Group, which was the warehouse, we put a clause in the contract that if they did not develop it as they promised within 5 years, we had the right of purchasing it back at the current, at the original sale price, not the valuation, and that way it would give some urgency. They'd never developed it. We asked council to exercise that right. We had to ask council twice in Manukau to exercise that right of buyback, and they finally did. Then the land sat there. We lined up IKEA to purchase that land for $40 million, and unfortunately the GFC hit the same week that the contract was to be signed, and IKEA pulled out. This has always been a project in partnership with council. We then had the land there sitting there doing nothing. It was in council's ownership then. We asked council, can we please now look at what we sell it for to fund the project? Change of mayor, change of political scene. The council new CEO said, no, we need to go through a process. And we said, well, what is that process? He said, you need to get a judicial review done. So at council officers' instruction, we reluctantly said, yes, we'll do that. We employed Paul Kavanagh QC for the sum of about $28,000 that we spent to present our case. Council, we don't have any control over your expenditure, but you're exactly right. The administration spent $300,000 and let a lawyer, in my view, just go wild on it and bill council hugely. And then Judge Cooper's decision, you're correct, Councillor Stewart, was that the proceeds, his exact decision was the proceeds do not, council has no obligation to give the proceeds of the land sale to the trust, but it does, as the trust has a express interest in the land, whatever occurs on that site, the trust have to approve. Okay, so that's exactly where it left. And then the Super City came about. We then went through all due process with council. The land was transferred into Regional Facilities Auckland, not into Auckland Property or into Auckland Parks, because of the express nature of the relationship we had with the land because of Judge Cooper's decision. And we went through an open and transparent process, again quite controversial, in regards to getting that land sold, which we did in partnership with the Auckland Property, Regional Facilities and ourselves. That's the history of the land sale.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and trustees, and Richard, thank you. I'm not as familiar as some of the other councils about what you do, and it's very great to have that background. Thank you. My question in a finance meeting is not unusually for finance questions. So I'm very interested that you're reducing your council funding, or you have reduced your council funding, and you're looking at a model that has potentially 35% paying for 65% of the community good. My question to you is, do you see yourself as being completely sustainable without any council funding long term?
Yes, that's our aim, and it's in our trust deed as well to be financially self-sufficient. And so this is why the hotel's critical for us, because we believe that will give us an advantage in the marketplace for that other 35% to increase that to 40%, being conferences, which deliver a higher yield because the conferences require accommodation on site or adjacent. So that is our aim within the next 5 years, is to be totally self-sufficient.
Very good, thank you very much.
Councillor Watson.
Thanks. No, just a question about the Whitewater Park and particularly the schools programs you go. I know it mentions here it's fully or partially given sponsorships. Just two questions really. One, are the programs like one day in, one day out, or are they ongoing? And two, what does partially or fully sponsored mean in terms of the price? Obviously, fully means it's free, but what's the partial component?
Yeah, so we have three different main core programs. So that was one that you saw. So it's $45 to do a program. $42 to do a program. If a school approaches us, we'll then subsidise half of that for them. So it'll be costing the school about $21 or $22. If it's some of our local schools in our immediate area, because remember, and that's any school throughout the whole of New Zealand will do that. But our trust deed still pertains to our community of interest is Counties Manukau. And so if there are low decile schools within Counties Manukau, we will then subsidise that fully, so it's free. And so of that 6,000 students, approximately 2,500 were free and the balance subsidised.
Okay, thanks.
And and again, all of our, it's a yield model. We can't give it away until we make it. And so, it's always that tension of controlling the yield of our overall operation.
And just one follow-up, do you get many schools coming from other parts of Auckland?
Yep. 48% of our schools come from Counties Manukau and the rest from all over Auckland. And that's also the same with our arts school program. Our schools, the only thing that stops us doing more in the school space is resource. I mean, especially in the Te Reo space, anything we do there is fully subscribed within an hour of it going out on the email. Thanks.
All right, we have two more questions. Member Kake.
Kia ora Richard, kia ora Sernal, and Hamish, good to see you again. I just want to acknowledge a couple of things first, and then I'll ask the question. So first of all, just want to acknowledge the business development that we've seen. I've grown up around this facility, lived in Papakura and further south, and just the opportunities that I guess through Richard and his team, the development, the construction of the site, going to local businesses, I think is some of that in-kind contribution that goes largely unrecognised. I know of a engineering company that really did well through a contract providing the steel there. And, so it's a lot of that stuff, I guess, people think that because they're in business they're making heaps of money, but it's actually not always the case. But it was through the centre that it gave it that I guess, that little nudge to get ahead. And now that's a really, really thriving local company still in Manukau. So just want to acknowledge that. And also on the people development side, I saw Rose Matawhao's first public appearance at the centre, and she just got the Billy T Yellow Towel Award last week. So she's come a long way. But again, the new beginnings that came out of the opportunities that this venue provided to our locals who are now international kind of stars. So those are my two acknowledgements. But my question really is, Richard, your organisation, the trust, your organisation used to have a really good relationship with Tainui. What's the situation today?
Yeah, probably, if I could just wind back, because that's a question that goes into governance, actually. And so going back to the Pacific Steering Group, and I think this is something as an outsider coming into Manukau over 16 years ago, the relationship that Manukau Council had with its own community, whether it be Pacific community, Chinese community, and iwi, was very, very strong. And so when we had that steering group, all of those stakeholders were involved in the process. And so when we set up the trust, we looked at different governance models for the trustee. So our trustees are appointed through an electoral college system, which was a system based on Infrastructure Auckland. So the appointees to our board, regional facilities now have the ability to appoint two. Counties Manukau Sport have one, EMA have one, and in relation to your question, Tainui Waka have one as well. So Julie Wade's our current representative, and so our relationship is very, very strong. It's family, it's whānau, it's all, we all work together. And then the representative that Tainui have appointed, Tainui Waka, as we are the tail of the waka, where we are, is Tētana Taki. And it is the theme of the venue, the whole theme of Maui, the legend of Maui is in our architecture. It's Maui's waka. The white water course symbolises the hook of Maui fishing. And every kid and every corporate that comes into our facility, they are played in our theatre before they go on the water, a safety video, and then a 3-minute digital animation of the legend of Maui. And Wero is all about the challenging our kids to actually get out from behind their devices, take a risk, enjoy adrenaline generated in the right ways, and accept that challenge. So putting down that Wero, and that comes through in that film. So it's part of our DNA, yeah.
Councillor Filipano, you...
No,
okay?
I'm fine. John,
Right.
Councillor Watson asked the questions I wanted answered.
Thank you, that's been very good.
If I could
just
just say one thing, Mr. Chairman. I think the thing for me and the trustees, which is the overwhelming thing, is the smile and the joy on the kids' faces after going through one of the programs at either the event centre or Wero. And you come away so sort of proud and pleased to be associated with these kids from all different walks of life, and that's what it's all about. And so we're investing, as Richard said, over between 30 to 40,000 kids a year come through this program, whatever it might be. It could be in the arts, it could be water safety or what. And it's a real privilege to be part of seeing these kids grow up and enjoy the advantages of having this in South Auckland. So on behalf of all the trustees and the people of South Auckland, we really appreciate the support that all you've given us, because without that support we wouldn't be able to do this for the children of South Auckland in particular. So thank you.
Well, just in driving your percentage of community access down a little bit, be aware that we want to keep it up at about 60%, because that's the key of just what Sanal said. So be aware, because it's no different than the Trust Stadium out west, where we want that community access about 60-65%. So thank you very much. Councillor Simpson, would you like to move? And Councillor Filipano? Oh, actually, I'm going to ask Councillor Filipano and Councillor Collins to move in second. Thank you very much. All those in favour?
Aye.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.